Broadcasting from the commodity capital of the world, Zurich, Switzerland, this is Insider's Guide to Energy.
This edition to Insider's Guide to Energy is brought to you by Fidectis. Go to www.fidectis.com for more information.
Welcome to Insider's Guide to Energy. I'm your host, Chris Sass, and with me today is Morten Wierod. Morten, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. I'm looking forward to talking to you a little bit about what you do. But before we start, why don't we have you introduce yourself to who you are and what you do to our audience?
Well, thanks, Chris, for having me on the show. And it's great fun to be here to talking about something which is important for me about energy transition, because I have worked with ABB for 25 years now. And today I'm leading one of our business areas of electrification, which is helping customers and partners driving the electrification of the world, which is everything from what we say from the source of power generation down to your plug in your home. So all the equipment needed to making the world more electric.
And so you're running the electric group. It's got to be a boom time for that, because the world is off to electrification, at least in Europe. I know in the pre-call we were talking a little bit about the current energy situation in Europe and how important electricity is to energy security and things coming up. So tell me a little bit about your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And the world is going electric. It's Europe, but it's also the United States. It's China. It's India. It's everyone. And it happens in all aspects. What you think about in daily life, in buildings, in the office, it's about also replacing a lot of fossil fuels and let's say fossil applications in factories, and it's also how we travel today in transportation. So I got an electric car. I'm not sure if you got one yet, but that's another part that requires a lot of electricity in the future when we all travel in a more sustainable way.
Yeah, I personally am very big into the EVs. We've got about 18 hours of content we're working through right now, just on the podcast, just on EVs. And I think that does change things quite a bit when you do that, and when you can actually have it hook into your house and be a backup and actually bring power home too, not just be transport. That to me is a pretty interesting situation as well.
Yeah, so that is where electrification comes in, both to your charger that you need at home, but also we see today with higher energy prices, you see a boom of installation of solar or PV panel up on the roof, and also with heat pumps and heat exchangers to be able to save energy and also to make energy more reliable for factories and units. So it is kind of the perfect storm between decarbonisation, where we want to replace, as I said, fossil fuel with electricity, and being able to create or generate energy in a more renewable way. So that's the solar, the wind, and so on. But at the same time, it's also about reliability. I mean, especially in Europe, the last year has shown that energy and energy efficiency has become, and energy security has become not just something for us as electrical engineers, but it's become a point of national security in Europe, and how we can operate society still and kind of keep the wheels turning. And even these days, when we have a war in Europe going on, I had to challenge the gas supply and everything around energy and electricity.
And is that happening fast enough, right? I mean, last year we were all a bit worried. Switzerland was a little bit insulated, but we still buy power from Germany in the winter. It was a mild winter, right? But you can't change infrastructure overnight. So I don't think we're through the crisis yet. moving to electrification, right? So we could have a bad winter next year and it would still be impactful, I think, across Europe.
Yeah, so we are still dependent on a lot of gas supplies, and we were fortunate as Europeans this year that the winter was pretty mild. If it had been a very cold winter, it could have been very different. So, but it's still not solved, and it's not. It's first of all we need to solve the energy reliability of fossil fuels. That's kind of the first step. But then we also want, I think, in most countries now have committed to a net zero. When most companies around the world, more and more, we're talking about the net zero or carbon neutral operations commitment. So it's more a question mark now, not if we should do it, but when we will be there. So if it's by 2030, 40, or 50, or 60, but that is the what has to happen. And the only way to do that is more renewable energy and more electrification. So to say from a business, but also from, it's good for us as a business, as ABB, but it's also what I believe is the right way forward. So I know this is the time also for all over my team members. They are highly engaged and motivated to help on bringing electrification out to everything we do.
So are you spending more time as your team more engaged with large enterprise right now, or more utility scale, or both?
It's really both. It's everything down from power generation with utility, connecting all that renewable energy that is now into the grid, and even helping there. So inside a large wind turbine, you will find a lot of ABB equipment there when you open the door and climb up those 70 or now even up to 200 meters up in these huge offshore windmills. So these are our opportunities, what we work with, but it's on every scale and every level where electrification is needed. So even down to but you have to do both the input side, which is the power generation, but then it's the output side, which is the consumption point, and that is down with what we talked about, is how you use energy, for instance, with in your car, that you're replacing your old petrol or diesel engine with an EV. So and every liter of petrol that you need to replace needs some renewable energy instead. So we will be busy for the next for many years still, because it's a lot of work to do when we're talking about electrifying everything we do.
And are there technologies that are helping you? So you sit in a unique position. ABB is a rather large company. You've got great visibility globally of what's going on. So where are we on the technology curve to be able to do this? Do we have the tools in the tool belt? Do you think that's there, or are we still waiting for new innovation to help us get there?
I think we can never say that everything has been discovered, everything has been innovated or developed already. So there is always an opportunity. But the good news is that a lot of very high energy efficiency products, like motors, like variable speed drives, it's frequency converters, these are equipment and application that already saves energy today. So it's not like we have to wait 10 years or 20 years to fix this. And that's always my mission, that we have to do things now and not delay it for that one silver bullet that will save energy 20 years from now. I mean, there could be new opportunities, like with fusion, nuclear power. But we have talked about that for how many? Since nuclear power was kind of invented and used in the first place. So, and we are far away still today. The same, we're talking a lot about hydrogen, which is something that will come in over time, but it will have relatively little impact before 2030, just also to put it in a bit of time perspective. So for me, it's about using the technology we have already available today and not wait for post or after 2030, but starting to use the most modern technology which is available today, which is both the hardware side I mentioned, like when you talk about what we do, about switchgear, about motors, about drives, there we can use much more efficient products, but it's also about getting everything we do digitally connected, because this is the age now of connectivity and digital, which means it's not just all of us that is walking around with a smartphone. But today, also all the equipment that we produce a lot of it have now built-in IoT connections so that they can connect to the cloud or to computers in a factory or in a building, so that we can use that also to see where energy is consumed, but also to turn it on and off at the right time so we can save even more energy. So being an engineer is always about using technology for the better, and we can do better.
So I agree with that. I had a background building telecommunications before I went into energy. And if I look at the IoT and all the inputs we're going to have, and if you look at demand response and being able to react in near real time, and the windows of market sizes getting shorter and shorter, is that a reality that we're seeing play out right now in Europe? Are you seeing us tee up to be able to do that and really be responding at internet kind of speeds?
Yeah, we are on the right track, but I still, as I say, I would like it to go faster. It's the one is we talk about the energy generation. I mean, that's the back to my wind and solar, but it's also about when we use energy, and there comes in to digital connected devices, but it's also about battery energy storage system that now becomes a topic, and all of this is to avoid those peaks, those expensive. I'm sure you have seen the same, that at times, or in some countries, you pay, even €1 for a kilowatt hour, and then there are other times you always receive money if you take energy out of the grid. And this is the opportunity of the future, where you will see much more of energy storage distributed out to small microgrids. So we are able to get more even usage of our power grid, because it's the peaks that is expensive to build out for the power utilities all over the world. So if you are able to do what we call load shaving or load shedding, then you are able to I would compare it with our roads. We have more than enough roads in the world for all the cars we have. The problem is that we all want to drive more or less at the same time in the morning or in the afternoon. That's why we have queues. And that's the same in our power network, that we cannot build it so that we never would have queues. We rather need to use technology again, that we consume it throughout the day in the right way. So you can do that even with new technology, but you can do it without reducing the comfort level of living. And I think that's the only way this can be done. So it's not about that we should walk around in our houses and freeze or in the dark, but maybe you don't need to heat your water during daytime when you're doing your cooking, or when you're using some of the other, or charge your car. It's don't need to charge just when you come home from the office. You can wait till the middle of the night, because you don't need it anyway before the next morning. So these are and all of this we can do with technology. So it is possible, but we need to use the technology and start thinking about it in a way, and that because or else we would spend, your energy bill will get too high, and especially in the afternoon or in the busy period. So, but as I say, my good news is that we have technology today that can deal with it, and it may come with a price tag shortly. I mean, as an introduction, but I think that is what we can do now.
So in the U.S., they introduced legislation, the IRA bill, that really to jumpstart the U.S. And really superheat the markets there. Do we need something like that in Europe, or is there already legislation similar in Europe that's going to uniformly across the EU help us accelerate this?
I think I would like to see more positive initiatives in the European Union. I think the Inflation Reduction Act in the US is a great initiative to drive this green transition that everybody wants to see. So it's more of the carrot, while in Europe has been more of the stick approach. EU taxonomy, more about legislation and taxes, instead of using a positive incentive. So I would really follow and do it the American way this time. So some credit to the US, even though we have a huge opportunity in the United States to have stricter kind of regulation and legislations around energy efficiency. I think there is the energy saving opportunity is much bigger, even than in Europe, if you look at it. So there are, but it's how to get there. It's probably the opportunity that we have in Europe. So I do hope the European Union also will put together a similar package that can kickstart and drive that energy transition, and especially if we're facing more of a downturn in some areas, this is where it could definitely help. Also to help the economy in many European countries.
That brings up another point is if you look at the growth and you talked about the ambitious goals that we um, have you found or is your team coming across the workforce to deploy and do all this? There's a lot of economic activity for employees, right? If you're whether you're installing, maintaining, or the software or whatever, there seems to be a whole market that comes with this. Are we teed up and ready for that? Do we have the depth? I mean, it seems like the job market's pretty good right now if you're in renewable space.
It is, and it's difficult to find enough good engineers. It's difficult to find enough electricians, as one very practical with all the when everybody want to have, as I say, PV panels up on the roof or EV chargers in your garage. Even the shortage of electricians and installers becomes a topic. So therefore, we are also promoting, even down to getting kids and students interested in technology. We do, for instance, the Girls on Track as part of our Formula E, ABB Formula E initiative, where we try to there attract, as I say, girls, but also kids more into the field of the engineering of the future. Because in my opinion, we probably need less influencers and bloggers and a bit more engineers and electricians.
And then the other thing I wonder about, as you were describing things that went through my head, is you talked about microgrids and the infrastructure in place. Are we still curtailing a lot of energy? Is it getting used? So is on a sunny day in Spain, am I using all the energy I'm making, or a windy day in Germany, or somewhere off the the coast in Denmark? Is that energy all getting used, or is it getting curtailed?
Today, it is being used because we don't have enough storage, so you have to take it out of the network. The network itself cannot store any energy, so it's a zero-sum game. What you produce need to be taken out somewhere, or else, and if there is no demand, you have to take out the supply. But we have to remember that we have replaced a lot of the installations so far are renewable. A lot have been used to replace nuclear power plants that has been closed around in Europe over the last years. Taking Germany as one example, it means we haven't really been talking about decarbonisation. Unfortunately, we haven't moved as much as we could. So the next step will be to replace a lot of our carbon power or fossil fuel powered power plants, replacing the brown coal with renewable. That's what will, if you were talking about decarbonisation, that is what will make the difference. So far, a lot of the replacement, unfortunately, has happened by replacing nuclear, which in my opinion has not been the right way. I would rather have run those nuclear power plants till end of life, as long as they are in a safe and secure place, and taking the decarbonization efforts first. But again, say we're into politics.
But energy is always politics, to be pretty candid. I don't think an episode goes by where we don't hit politics at some point when you talk energy. And so when you talk decarbonization, do you see turbines, like gas turbines, capturing carbon having longer life, or do you think we'll all go straight to electric? Do you think we'll get?
I think carbon capture is definitely part of a solution. But whatever, I mean, fossil fuels will never be renewable. So at some day, we have to move to more renewable energy. But I think as part of a decarbonization journey, carbon capture definitely has a role to play. But if you're talking in 200 years from now, I'm sure there will be other technologies that will be used instead.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that we have fusion at some point as well. I know we just talked to. There's a lot of investment that I've seen in the we did an episode recently, but there's many startups and a lot of money going into fusion. So hopefully it actually becomes reality.
Yeah, absolutely. But it, as I say, it may be quite long away from us. So I don't think we can, from a decarbonization point of view, I don't think we can take that kind of wishing for or hoping for that will come up with the one silver bullet that fixes everything, because that may have too big consequences. So I'm still arguing that let's continue try to find it, but let's also work in parallel with other options.
Well, I think there's a camp that believes that if you are chasing other things right now instead of electrification, although they don't necessarily believe maybe electrification is the total end game, is you're taking dollars out and resource away from 2030, 2050 nearer term goals that they may believe in hydrogen and other things, but they want to see the invest going into infrastructure that has a carbon impact now. That's what I've heard from many folks that feel that.
And I think absolutely, it's not one silver bullet here. There's not one solution that's going to fix everything. But I think electrification is one part of it for sure. But it's not the only one and the only thing we have to do. So, as you say, investing also in new areas, that being hydrogen. We also see the alternative use of ammonium for shipping. There is a lot of good technology being developed. So I think here it's to find what's the right solution for the different problems we're facing. And but one of the big ones, and as you understand, close to my heart, is the electrification run of it.
So what are some of the hurdles that you're experiencing? So you run a large business unit focused on electrification. You're talking to folks day in, day out. Your team is out there. What are some of the hurdles that you're trying to get over right now?
I think what we often struggle with is the short-term versus long-term focus, and with the OPEX versus CAPEX, operational expense and capital expenditure. And with that, I mean, often we see now that people have spent so much money on energy, so they don't have money to do the energy savings, which is, I always say, it's very expensive to be poor. Would be like buying your new refrigerator, which is it's very low on energy consumption, or so I mean, of the lifetime of a fridge, you could spend 3 times the cost of the fridge, but people don't have the money right now. So you rather pay for the next 15 years when you own it. And that's the same what we see with business owners. They are often having the same challenges. Do we have now the money available, the funding available to make the energy savings that we could? And then it's also to find out what is the technology available, because it's always fight between, even inside every company also, where do we allocate capital? What's the investment that has the shortest payback? And there it comes where we come in and try to help them now when energy has become maybe from a cost item number 4 or 5 becomes number 2, or even number 1 in some businesses if you're consuming a lot of energy. So of course then the attention for it is much higher, and that's why it's kind of also boosting our business these days. So it's about helping companies to make better decisions, and how we do it is by digital solutions, and then coming in with a technology with better hardware, better products and solutions, so they can make the right investment on where they so they stay in business or remain successful.
But I think I've seen that already in conversations, right? So the behind the meter stuff, generally, it's a straight ROI, and it's a straight business decision, right? You talked about peak shaving. I mean, you can save money there, and you can do it. And then I think the second element, which isn't necessarily equal to the ROI, but directly does impact the company's performance, is stability and worrying about if they'll have power. As we're changing, right? Those are the 2 drivers that I've been seeing, right? So you get the near term, can we save money? And then it's almost like the old PPA model where I can prepay, or I can figure out what my model is going to be over time. But the bigger question is, do you believe in stability? So if you're a manufacturing and you need the power, are you going to be able to operate? I think that's the second motivator, but that one doesn't seem to be quite as coin operated or quite as close to the cash flow.
It is very dependent where you are in the world on that point. If you're running a mining operation in South Africa, you have, or a beverage plant, a brewery in South Africa, and I was there on a business trip recently. So you will have then to see how that impacts a business to stay in business, because one is that you cannot produce and your whole production may go to waste, and you have to throw it away if you don't have constant cooling, constant operation, if you're running a brewery or a dairy farm. So I think here we are in areas where you see that energy stability, in some countries in the world, we take it for granted because it never happens. But we also see in other parts of the world where it is a real challenge, and it adds a lot of cost to your operations, because you need then to have backups, which again is expensive, with diesel generator and a lot of equipment outside the building. So this is what adds cost to businesses today, and that is also how the challenge that they face in many places of the world.
So are you saying that is more pronounced than in geographies that are a bit more challenging? But isn't the infrastructure, I mean, there were concerns of rolling brownouts and blackouts in Europe, which is pretty mainstream. That's our backyard, right? So did you see, at least in the last 12 months, an uptick in large companies, even in Europe, worried about those concerns rather than, I mean, not that South Africa is not mainstream, but that's probably a little bit more of an outlier for most of our audience.
No, and we have seen it also in Europe. And you see most of it. One thing, if people are investing more in energy reliability, that could be backup solutions, battery storage systems, or with generators. And it's the same what we've seen in the US, where here we also have several long periods with blackouts in California with forest fires and the hurricanes in Florida. This is impacting business where they may be out of power for 1 or even 2 weeks. So there is a massive investment these days as part of the Inflation Reduction Act as well, where you will see investments in what we call underground cabling, so that they're able to, if you have a forest fire in California and you have all the cables underground, they would be safe, and you would be able to keep the power on even when you have a forest fire. So that is 10,000 miles of underground cabling going on in the state of California, which is a massive investment. So and this is what you have to do is part also of the change of weather. And so it doesn't matter if it's, as I say, hurricanes or forest fire. The answer, again, is about getting everything underground so you are able to keep reliable power and keep society going and up and running much faster after those incidents, because they happen now. Before it was every third year, and it seems now to be more 3 every year. So and I don't think it will be less of it. So that's the investment also that is ongoing in California and Florida as 2 examples.
Now, are you seeing any other trends that you want to talk about or share with us that you see taking place today?
I think the main trend we see in with our partners is around and customers is where the commitment to sustainability and decarbonization, and how the investment also follows that. And I think the engagement in companies, it comes from investors as a demand for more of a sustainable profile on companies, so you're able to get funding in the future. But we also see it with students and newer employees coming into the company, requiring that, asking more of how does this, what does ABB do, as an example, where how can I make a difference if I join ABB? And I love that question too, when new hires are coming in with that attitude, and we do see more and more of it, because people want to be part of companies that makes a difference in the world.
Well, I think you're giving a fairly optimistic picture of where we're going. I mean, you're talking that there's activity there. I mean, I think you see solar and wind is a near term fix from what I heard you say. That helps us near term. I would argue the South African mining operation might be a small modular nuclear reactor might work well there for an operation like that. But I'm biased towards that. I think it's a good solution for that kind of thing. Um, any final thoughts to bring it all together as we wrap up this interview today?
As I say, I'm an engineer. I do like technology, and I think that's the only way to deal with some of the challenges we face as a society today, is to use technology and what is available today, and not hope that sometime in the future something new will come and save us. So I'm very much result driven. I like to see actions being taken now. And I think it's good news that we have a lot of technology available that we can use and be able to deal with some of the big challenges we face as societies today. So that's my base of optimism. But then it's all down to all of us to make better decisions.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing with me and our audience an Insider's Guide. It's been a pleasure to have you as a guest today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chris, for having me.
For our audience, we hope you've enjoyed the content as much as I did. It's been a fun interview. If you do enjoy the content, don't forget to subscribe, follow us on YouTube, or watch us on Facebook, and we'll talk to you again next week. Bye-bye.